Look, will you be absolutely genuine with me? No deception, please. I want you to do something that expresses you without the slightest deception.
Welcome back, everybody. We have a super interesting episode for everybody today. So far in the first 4 episodes, you guys kind of got to hear solely what the male perspective is on a realm of different categories. Today we have someone very special to all of us who specializes in life coaching as well as relationship advice. So today's episode is going to be not only given from the male perspective, but as well from a female perspective, who is going to be able to break down not only how we feel, to simplify it for the audience that might be female, but also to break down how the female audience will feel so that we can actually absorb some of their knowledge. In relationships today, what my belief system is that we are kind of in this cosmic exchange of energy where souls are weaving in and out of one another. And relationships are the crucible to transcend to your most divine masculine and feminine energy and alchemize through the spiritual vessel in order to reach your highest level of self. I think that the masculine energy is the outward while the feminine is inward. I believe that the feminine energy is the oracle, it's the visionary, it's the feeler, and it's the job of the masculine energy to lean into that and take that vision and turn it and create it into life. The female energy is the essence of being, while the masculine is the essence of doing. The masculine strength is her weakness, and her strength is our weakness. And I believe that a lot of relationships, when they come into this unification through that synchronicity, can create this beautiful yin and yang frequency. But the problem in today's day and age is, I believe a lot of that is lost in translation. I think that there's an over-feminization of men and a way over masculinization of women, because a lot of us now are too busy leaning into our wounds and our trauma and neglecting the intimacy that ties into relationships. So leading with that, I would love to immediately branch this off into Kate, and welcome Kate, everybody.
Thank you.
So Kate, you're a life coach, and I guess your expertise lies in doing relationship advice to women, correct?
Men and women.
Men and women.
Yeah.
So as somebody that's leaned on Kate, I can absolutely say to the fact that she has steered me in the direction of definitely being able to be more familiar within myself. And as a relationship coach and for men and women, what do you think what do you see the most, that the biggest issue between the dichotomy of men and women are nowadays in relationships?
Well, there's so many, but I think branching off of what you were just referring to with like the masculine and the feminine is definitely the false ideas of what those things really are. Like, I think a lot of the masculinity and the femininity thing is, I think a lot of men and women have the wrong idea of what those things really are, and they both kind of enter a more toxic realm in their heads of what they think it is. So some women think femininity or being more feminine is like being hard to get, or being cold, being stoic, being mysterious, being, very bitchy maybe, or being just any of those things. I think in social media it's referred to like as a black cat. And I think a lot of men think being masculine, in regards to a lot of conversations that you guys have had, is like, being maybe stoic, being cold, being tough, being, even if it's like a physical thing that they think that being a man is like having muscles or being tall or whatever. They have these ideas of what it's not at all. So I think that one is the biggest problem, because I think those two things just get in the way, that men don't want to open up and women don't want to soften. And I think that in itself is just huge, that people don't actually really know what it means to have a healed and balanced masculine energy and feminine energy. So that one is a big thing that gets in the way. The second thing, I think it's just the time that we live in, that I'm not one to ever tell anybody to lower their standards, but I think people's expectations are far too unrealistic, in a sense that it's just not fair to other human beings. Like, it's not like the standards or the expectations of wanting respect or wanting to be reciprocated or wanting effort or wanting consistency or presence, but it's more like what I use in my sessions with people is everybody, whether they know it or not, has a relationship list or rules, really, relationship rules in their head of how they think things are supposed to go, like how they should always be and how they should never be, how a man should always show up or how a woman should always show up, and what you should always have to do and what I should never have to do. Like you should always pay and I should never have to pay, or you should always reach out to me first. I should never have to reach out to you first. So there's these rules that men and women have that, again, sometimes they're not really even aware that they have them, that get in the way. And I think people end up having low patience and low tolerance for these relationships because if it doesn't fit or check off all the boxes that they have, they just junk it. Like, it's like, no, there's somebody better than. There's always this, it's gone too far with the grass is always greener. Like we're way too aware of how many people there are out there now with dating apps and with social media. So I think people are so quick now to just think that there will always be something better. And what's paired with that is also a problem is they're constantly looking that the problem is outward and it's not inward. So I think you can maybe call it accountability for self is just a huge problem. It's probably the most consistent thing I see where people come in and they think they'll come, whether it's a man or a woman, they'll come in with me and they think that I'm about to side with them. Like they're like, oh, you just listen to me quick. Like wait until you hear what he said or what she said. And I hear it and they really think that it's like, it's not them. Like it's not, there's nothing I'm doing wrong at all, but it's never the case. And I honestly, even down to girls that I have that log on that are like victims of cheating, where it's like, he was cheating on me the whole time. Like he's such a piece of shit. He's such an asshole. Like they don't want to take any accountability for the nature of the relationship or where it went. And that's not blame.
So let me ask you this, right? So going based off of everything that you said.
Yeah.
Where does the problem lie in? Can that be fixed through a certain level of communication through conflict? So like, from everything that you said, I feel like there is just this lack. Okay, there's a lack of self-awareness. There's a lack of fulfillment. There's a lack of internal fulfillment. There's a lack of self-love. There's a lack of self-appreciation. If you can't appreciate oneself in a relationship, you can't appreciate your partner. So, and I feel like just going off from what you said, there seems to be a lack of communication for conflict resolution almost.
Yes, and I think yes, but also the bigger problem that, like, the first question you just asked of, like, so what is the problem, is people are not even that they're not actually doing it, they're not willing to look in the mirror.
Where's
they're
that come
not willing.
From? What do you think is the difference now in 2024?
I don't know that was ever. I don't know
it's
that
always been like that.
Yeah, I just think the problem with 2024 versus like 60 years ago is that, like, they didn't have like the perception of having the perceived idea that there's all these options out there. I feel like
social media
you
definitely
made shit work
our
back
network
then.
is too big.
But what about
we're not meant to handle that?
You
many
hit that
people in our
something
circle.
you hit really hard. That was, I think, a great topic. Was you said the lack of expectations.
Yeah, they're unrealistic.
But what do you, I feel like?
Where's that coming from now that it wasn't then?
Because I feel like it's different now than it was in the 80s and the 90s. Like, people knew where they were in the 90s.
Yeah,
people knew where they were. Like, why not now? What do you think's the biggest?
This might be like, and this isn't like factual, obviously. This is just
your
my opinion, and it's a hot take, probably.
Show.
But I really think that in therapy and self-help, specifically in like the last 5 years, there's been a huge like toxic shift in it. Like, there's it's become very egotistic.
But
where it's
where
like,
do you think the root of that? If you could be a doctor and prescribe a pill to change that, who are you giving the pill to? Where is it coming from?
Where is it stemming?
Yeah, because these are all symptoms, right? They're all symptoms from a cause. What do you think that root cause is?
I mean, there's a few, but my biggest one in my head would be social media.
Yeah.
Social media, but it's not just
because I don't think social
TikTok
media lowers the
expectation.
You think it gives them a higher
it's
expectation?
Media. No, the social media maybe paints the picture for there's more out there, but it's media in general. Like, for example, think about the movies that we watch. Like, I tell everybody that we mostly, like the world, but mostly America, we live in a very codependent society. So think about the songs that we listen to, the movies that we watch, the think the things
So
that's
just the
painted,
culture
yeah,
in-
what's
in-
painted
as
in
it
all
is.
these songs and all these movies is like, if you leave me, I'll die without you. I can't breathe without you. Like you need me, I need you.
literally
And
the
it's
music.
like,
Oh,
even
yeah.
people love The Notebook, but I always talk about The Notebook in sessions. That is the most fucking toxic relationship
If
in the
you're a
world.
bird, I'm a bird. I happen to
that's
love that
whatever.
movie, though,
That's
okay?
Cute, but
I
think
love that
about-
movie.
That's cute, but think about the basis of it.
Yeah, it
She
makes
has
sense.
a boyfriend. He chases her. She constantly pushes him away. She's that hard to get feminine now. And he spends the rest of his life writing her letters every single day. He's never with another woman. He just dreams about her. They get back together. She physically abuses him. She slaps him in the face, pushes him. He pulls her back in, like, and we're all watching this like, oh my God, I want that.
Right,
so
you
we go on a
toxic
date with a guy
motherfucker.
who maybe doesn't, yeah, and maybe we go on a date with a guy who's maybe actually a healthy man
Right.
who is whole without us and can breathe when we leave the room and isn't texting us 24/7, and we think it's a problem.
Right.
He's not that into me. He's so into himself. You know what? That's not what I want. That's not what I need. So it is a media thing, so that you can't change that. But even like the songs we listen to, like I was actually thinking the other day of that Jordan Sparks and Chris Brown song, No Air. It's literally about how I can't breathe if you're not here and I will die if you're not near me. And we're all like, oh my God, like that's so cute. But it's what's been given to us. I mean, I knew that song when I was 10 years old, you know? So that's like the bigger picture of where it starts. And then you'll never fix that. So that's where it comes that you have to like touch base with reality. And I think that's why healthy relationships for most people are so difficult, because healthy relationships typically are two whole people that want to be together, but they don't need each other, you know, and people don't like that. That was a very hard pill for me to swallow when I met him, of like, oh wow, like this, he doesn't need me.
Yeah,
Like
I think
he
that
really
makes
wants
it
to be with
successful.
me. And in my opinion, that's really way more romantic
Yeah.
when somebody can walk, you know, like they don't have to be here, but they want to be here. But it's hard to be in a relationship like that, where you're like, wait, like you actually don't have to put up with my shit. Like you don't need me. Like you're not this codependent, anxious person who has no standards and no boundaries and will just go through anything. So like that's the goal. Like that's what you want, especially a woman as well. Every man wants a woman who, but again, this is where like it twists a little bit. We think that it's like of course you want a woman who's independent and self-sufficient and isn't nagging you and going through your phone and questioning your whereabouts.
Until she goes out the first night and everyone fucking complains about it.
Well, and then we take that too far though, and we think he wants a woman who's like just always cool and always set and like not emotional and not this, and like we play it too cool for too long, and then eventually we're women, our emotions come out.
So
and
can I interject here for
Yeah,
one
of
second?
course.
So like I kind of want to go from everything you said about media and like back to Mike's question. So
Yeah.
nowadays, to answer the why, and you correct me if this is just as a male
there's
perspective,
probably
and I
no
would love to
correction,
hear.
yeah.
We live in a society now where people have this inflamed sense of self and ego and validity. You know, so we're on social media. Hold on.
You think it's inflamed ego?
Yes,
or is
'cause
it,
look at it this
or
way.
is it,
Look
is
at
it
what
lack of self-worth
Both.
and they need someone
Well,
else?
you
From
need
both,
both,
because the
because you
ego
need the ego
ties
to
into that
supplement
lack.
that.
If you don't have
the
an ego,
self-worth,
then you're
yeah.
not in that lack state. So if you go to social media, men and women, they post the same shit. It doesn't matter if you got a woman who's flaunting with her asshole spread out or a guy that's flaunting with his, six-pack pulling all the way down to his meat. The thing is if you look at this, okay, these people all feel a inflamed sense of self, okay? And they are looking for gratification through external sources. They're looking for their validity to feel better from what somebody else says, thinks, and feels about them. And anyone can use the excuse, I upload this for me. I'm uploading that just for me. Well, if it's for you, then keep it to your fucking phone. I've uploaded things
We all
because I
do.
know I look good. But I also, at some point in our time, want to be like, all right, well, what do they think? And we all do that. But that inflamed sense of self now adds to this falsified perception that our whole value and worth ties into, one, the amount of likes we get, to the amount of attention we receive. And that's where our importance now is derived from. And I think now in relationships, we're so used to being a certain way and looking without, like you said, Kate, that we stopped looking within. So when we finally meet somebody, we're still looking without. We're still daydreaming without rather than looking within and waking up. And I think that's where the problem ties into. It's off of media. It's what we see. It's what we hear. It's what we've now been conditioned to that's in front of our face on a daily basis. You cannot escape the amount of attention that you are receiving and that you're craving and that you're dying to get, because then I feel like when you get in a relationship, as much as you want that from your partner, there's still this subconscious mindset where you're still expecting it from outside sources.
Well, that's a big reason why, I mean, I shouldn't say it's a big reason why. It's definitely one of the reasons why people step out of relationships. Sorry. It's definitely a big reason why people step out of relationships, and that doesn't make it okay. But that's a big thing, that their ego is so inflamed that if they're not getting the satisfaction or the praise that they want to be getting 24/7, they'll just go get it elsewhere. And this is kind of, you probably won't be surprised to hear this, but the most common thing that I hear with people in sessions when they're newer in relationships, mostly women, but definitely sometimes men, is they'll say, I hate admitting this, but I miss being when I was single and having this this pouring of just likes and guys sliding into my DMs and guys liking my photos, girls DMing me. They're like, now that I'm in a relationship, I don't really get that anymore. And they're like,
that's
I
an
miss
actual
that.
thing.
Yeah, dude, that's way more common than you think.
But it's
That
not,
is
but it's also not
crazy.
what you think of. These people aren't saying oh, I want to go entertain somebody else.
They just miss the attention.
They
of
miss the
other
attention.
It's not even the attention though, because the thing that you guys all do realize, even having the podcast now, you'll start to realize, if you haven't already, is there is also a natural part of, it feels good when people praise you, when people are like, I like what you're saying, I like what you look like, I like what you're doing. It's not just the far end of the spectrum of posting half naked bikini pictures and guys sliding into your DMs, but yeah, it feels good when you post a picture or you post a video or you post your content, and it's natural to get all these likes or all these reposts or all these comments that you're like, oh, this feels good.
But why wouldn't you get that if you're dating someone, unless you were getting some thought remarks from uploading your vajayjay on the thing?
Because
what stops them from still doing that? Because you have a boyfriend now, living your boyfriend life. They're still following you. No, that's not how it works.
Well, you're probably posting less content
right.
that is trying to appeal to
you're probably not
those
posting
type
so
of
many
people.
selfies all the time and so many pictures.
I just feel like that's so damaged. I understand what you're saying, but I do that with my kids. If I wanted to, I could probably, if I really had nothing to do, I could probably make an Instagram page when I walk my kids out.
Yeah.
I could probably blow it the fuck up to be
because you'll have fucking Brody in the background with two middle fingers.
And it's just us having fun, living our normal life.
But that's the thing, though, because I think the people that are having those problems don't really know how to engage and interact with people based on their hobbies or their interests.
Value.
And they're just relying on physical and shallow.
Because they're not just saying oh, no one's liking my content anymore. And this is also a big problem that we can discuss if you wanted to. But a lot of the thing is the way that people, and why it's a bigger female problem is because a lot of females and a lot of good-looking females, they've been taught their whole life, sometimes subconsciously, not even intentionally, that's where their value is. So they get into these relationships or not, honestly, and they don't know that there's more value to them. They don't know that they're intelligent, they're emotionally intelligent, they're smart, they're funny, they're kind, they're empathetic, and their value list it's morphed. Their looks are number one. It's well, this is where my value comes. This is where I get attention. This is why men try to talk to me. This is why men commit to me.
Do you think that ties into do you think that ties into, so we're talking about value now of women, and this is
and
a men and
honestly.
women conversation. This is for both
There's
parties.
both.
You take OnlyFans, for example, right? You have women out there putting a price sticker of $4.99 on their butthole. Okay, that's literally what women are now valuing themselves at. You have men doing the same stuff. So that devaluation of self now, I feel like they've already capped themselves at what they're worth. You have people that pay for other people's time, which I feel like is the most pathetic thing that you can do. No one should be paying for anybody's time. So do you also think, tapping into this whole media sense and your whole perception of valuing oneself, that is also what's kind of, I guess, pushed onto society to kind of deteriorate people's self-worth and expectations of oneself in a relationship?
Explain what you're asking.
So again,
But what devalues it? Because it's the fact that they're like devaluing themselves and like as like a porn
I think
style?
when I mean
it's not even in a porn style. It's just that people don't have value and worth for themselves anymore. And now we live in a society where people will put a value and worth on themselves. OnlyFans is just an example.
Yeah,
it's a price sticker.
Because this is going to be a great fucking podcast. Because I'm not going to lie, dude. If I could cover my tattoos, and I believe in one person is happy, another person is happy, and two people make happiness.
I don't want you to even finish this sentence.
Hold on, we're finishing it. On here, she'll agree with me. If I could cover my tattoos, me and my wife would have our own OnlyFans. 1,000%.
If you could be anonymous, you're saying?
If I could...
Like
1,000%.
Wear a fucking tuxedo and put one of those horse faces on.
We had all the ideas. But
okay?
if I could cover all my tattoos and you... There was never a chance in hell that my kids at some point or their teachers would be like, "That's Mickey's dad."
Yeah.
I would.
I'm still not. I'm still not paying for it.
This is fair because he's thinking from a business mindset.
We would
if he
do
could
it.
capitalize on something that he already enjoys, would it be worthwhile? No one would ever know.
And I value there is no one. There's very minimal people out there in the world that are more self-supportive of themselves than me. Like I value myself. I feel like on a much higher than the average human being, and I would do the OnlyFans. We've talked about it numerous times, effortlessly. But I just think it's crazy because I never looked at it on the flip side.
Are you saying because you make a lot of money?
Yeah,
right.
That's it. Straight money. I don't give a fuck. I don't care what people think. And I just don't want my kids growing up like, oh, I know your mom from the fucking OnlyFans. Yeah. That's the only thing that stops us. So like, oh, that's your dad's hand tattoo.
That's the reason not to do it. It's because people are going to see you in real life.
But I never thought of it as like, just everything that you're bringing up. I never...
What, that your butthole's worth $4.99?
Yeah, but this is kind of like what you were just talking about, and we're just like rolling into other comments. And I never thought of relationship therapy of like people would really talk about this, and I'm just like, I didn't know where this episode was going.
Yeah,
and I'm just kind of mind blown.
No one knew where this episode was going.
Well, if you want to go with your example of the girl with the $4.99 butthole, like if you want to put her in a relationship, like what I mean by value is like how like that will erode the relationship is that like. When she doesn't think she brings anything else to the table besides her $4.99 butthole, like she's not going to be very secure in the relationship or very trusting of her boyfriend, or if she thinks that that's all that she brings to the table. Right. So that's what is so common with females with looks, honestly, and their bodies, is that like this is all I bring. So that's a huge reason why they're so insecure in relationships is because or so anxiously attached is because like they think like I'm nothing else. Like I don't bring much to the table, and that shows. Yeah, like you can. That's obviously palpable in a relationship when you're dating somebody that just thinks that they're, for the lack of a better term, like worthless. And that's a lot of like the work that I do with men and women is them trying to like find self-worth, because that's like if you don't have that. You no matter what relationship you go into, no matter who you go into it with, I don't care how conscious this person is or how secure this person is, it won't work.
So when you started dating Taylor, and then I want to like bring this right to you because I'm so interested to see your thought process. I am so interested to hear what Taylor has to say. Now, simple yes or no. Yeah, and then I'm going to ask Taylor a question right away. When you two first started dating, did you feel that you were at your optimized self of self-worth and self-value?
When we first started dating, yes, I felt like we were the most perfect energetic match, and the first thing I had in my head was this is exactly what I deserve.
Okay. Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good.
So being the man that I know that you are, and obviously I've learned to know who Kate is as well, what has been the foundation between the two of you to keep your relationship so intact? How do you navigate, for the listeners out there that may be struggling in relationships currently? And then I want you to answer right after him, but I want to know your psyche. When you two face a conflict of sorts.
I was going to say, I want to disclaim really quick.
Right. No.
People that watch this know him, and a lot of people know him. And I'm not saying people don't know me, but I think since we've started dating, there's like this really adorable idea of like, I just love you guys. Like, you guys are so perfect. And like, I just want to disclaim that like, we're not. And this relationship, I'm proud of it. And I hope he is too, but it's work. Like it really
every
is
relationship
work. It has
work.
not.
But when you say, I have a question. When you say it's
seamless.
work, do you think it's you working on each other, Or do you think it's you working on yourself to benefit each other?
I think we challenge the shit out of each other, and
Which
I
is
think
so
that's
important,
uncomfortable
though. It's so
sometimes that we both have.
I think to answer your question,
let him
sometimes
go.
you tell other people this is something that you need to work on,
right?
And then sometimes you realize it's something that you need to work on,
right?
And I think this dynamic happens a lot of times in like families, and like you hate your dad, but you do the same shit that your dad did when you get older.
Right.
So it's like the reason that you hated the things that he was doing is because you were that way as well.
Right.
So I think some of those times where you are trying to work on somebody else, you're really trying to work on yourself, or you're saying you're the problem. It's not me. And then like, I know like we can both be stubborn. So a lot of times, even if maybe we are the problem, the first reaction is to be like, I'm not the problem, you're the problem. You know, like I'm right on this. And then that's where like I think the work comes in.
So my thing to you guys is then, because I made a comment when I was opening this episode up about intimacy, right? And you just said something which literally ties directly into that. And then again, I'm going to reverberate this back to you. So like what I think a lot of relationships lack nowadays the most is intimacy. And intimacy has nothing to do with the physicality sense of it whatsoever. Physical aspects of a relationship are super important, but when you have intimacy, that's you seeing into me. You know what I'm saying? And I believe that the whole foundation of relationships are meant to mirror back, like you were saying, those darker and lighter sides, and also most importantly, find a home for those darker elements in your monsters to find peace and a solace resting place. And I believe that if you guys are mirroring one another, and not you two, but in general, a relationship where people genuinely love one another and they have intimacy, their minds, their hearts, they resonate at the same frequency and vibration. Their body, their soul, their spirit, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, everything is in pure harmony with one another. But I think what you said is so important for anybody listening right now, the fact that there's this mirror of elements going on. And I believe that if you can tap in to the deepest elements of your intimacy with your partner, it's allowing yourself to mirror the bad habits and then being open up to that mirror that's being reflected back to you and saying, you know what, maybe the way I've navigated my life is not correct. And maybe there is something actually wrong with me. Maybe I'm still tied in to holding on to these wounds, and where did these wounds come from, and why have I never faced them before? And this level of discomfort where, you know, you're saying something to Kate or Kate's saying something to you, and why am I irritated by this? Why am I shutting down from this? Why is this bothering me? And again, for everybody listening, it's so important that Taylor just said that. Intimacy is about mirroring these reflection of your darker and lighter elements and then giving it a home for there to be a final resting place for comfort. So going back to you. Hi.
Hi. You're making me nervous.
What is, when you're dealing with clients, right? What do you think the biggest issue with conflict is? How come there's no conflict resolution now? How come it's so difficult for people when something goes wrong the first time? Why is it so hard for people to just sit there and have maybe a objective point of view rather than this subjection where they're immersed in their own feelings and feeling it to deal with it? Why is it so hard nowadays for people to just listen, take a step back, and have proper conflict resolution?
Well, the thing that you're referring to is actually called the pause, and that is a learned skill that takes years. I forget what author or psychiatrist or whoever it was that it's his concept, and that's when someone says something and you know that you're triggered, but it's a practice to practice the pause in between of like legitimately taking a deep connecting breath and choosing how you're about to act. So there's the absence of that. The fact that that is a practice, but there was something you just said about the conflict resolution. I just think that people don't. I'm going somewhere with this, I promise.
Let's go.
I remember in my early 20s, I was in a nursing program, and I remember for the class was 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, and I remember for the first 4 hours, they would teach us, my professor would literally, and this was her method, she would teach us for 4 hours, this is what you're going to be tested on. This is what they're going to ask you when they show up for your clinicals. This is what you're going to, this is what you need to know to pass this test. This is what the textbook is telling you. This is what the law is telling you. Then she would spend the last 2 hours of the class saying, this is what you're really going to do when someone codes. Like, this is how you're really going to act in reality when emotion is present and there's adrenaline and there's chemicals, like, you know, going through your body and it's really a life or death situation. This is what you're actually going to do. And it's almost never what the textbook said. You're going to take some parts of the textbook, but like in reality, it's not that the textbook is wrong. It's just that it's not practical.
It's when somebody,
right, when someone's coding in front of you, you're not going to grab the closest doctor and then call this one and then put on your gloves and then like put on your gown. Like, that's not what's going to happen. Like, that's just not how it's going to go. That's how it's legally supposed to go. And that's what the textbook tells you is how it's supposed to go, but it's not what happens. So as far as conflict resolution goes, it's difficult because I can sit here and say like, okay, if he says something that's super triggering to me or makes me feel super defensive, the textbook answer is for me to pause and say to him, I'm feeling a little triggered right now. That really hurt me. And like, I need a minute. And do you mind? Or for him to now hug me and give me a kiss and say, I'm so sorry. I hear you. I didn't mean to make you feel like that. That's the textbook version. But is that really going to happen? Maybe after years and years and years of practice, but probably not when there's triggers present and there's history present and there's chemicals, again, like hormones present where like your cortisol is high and now your adrenaline's high and now you're scared. And it gets in the way of like reality, like what I can tell somebody, this is how you should act when he triggers you or she triggers you or vice versa. And this is probably how it's going to go down. And this is how you could practically work on it. And I just think that the problem there, though, as far as like your answer with conflict resolution is people don't want to be wrong. And that's not necessarily a defensiveness or a stubbornness, but like, okay, this is going to sound sexist. Men typically don't want to be wrong. And it's not that you guys don't like being wrong. It goes deeper than that. You got if we're upset about something, you take it personally. You think there's something you're not doing right. There's something you did wrong and you don't want to be wrong. And it's not because I'm stubborn, but if I'm wrong, that means that I failed you. And if I failed you, that goes all into masculinity, right? Now with females, a big side of like conflict resolution is emotion. We just want to feel heard. I just want you to validate me. I just want you to understand what I'm feeling. I'm not blaming you. I'm not saying this is your fault. I just want you to recognize how you've made me feel. I'm not talking about your intention. I'm just talking about your impact. They go against each other. Men are kind of like, well, no, I'm not going to validate you because I didn't do anything wrong. And it's like, I didn't say you did anything wrong. I just want you to recognize how I'm feeling. It's like, well, if I recognize how I'm feeling, that means I'm taking responsibility and I'm not taking responsibility.
But what about that? So you said a word that Mike loves.
What word?
Validation.
Yeah. So, I don't think a lot of people know what that means.
So that's the thing. Like, I kind of want to tap into that for a second. So I believe that conflict resolution doesn't take place, one, because there is no validation of one's feelings. And you said something about the masculine energy, right? Mm-hmm. I want to agree to disagree on something because I believe as the masculine energy, and if I'm having conflict with somebody, it is my purpose now not to fight back and say, okay, no, I wasn't wrong. I have to, one, validate your feelings. And then I have to make sure that, one, you are trusting in me.
Well, you're referring to a healed masculine
and
energy.
Most importantly, that you are safe around expressing yourself.
Like no one that watches
no, not no one that watches
hold on,
but that's a practice. That's
so
not
here's
natural.
the thing, right? Like I heard this analogy, your partner is drowning. Mm-hmm. And as they're drowning, you are sitting there going, you knew you couldn't swim. Fact. Mm-hmm. You knew there was no lifeguard. Fact. Mm-hmm. You knew you had to wait an hour after eating or you were going to cramp up. Fact. You know that you have a hard time swimming at night. Fact. Mm-hmm. And rather than validating the fact that they are drowning in pain, drowning in sorrow, drowning in grief, drowning in regret, and just sitting there and assisting them and feeling into their pain, I feel like the other person is always too busy defending themselves.
Well, that's what you're referring to is what I was just speaking about of like you're referring to like textbook and practicality. Like textbook 100%. If you have a healed masculine energy, yes, like what you just described is the right way to go about things. That is the healed proper way to go about things, but the majority is not healed and is not at that level yet. And that's where, because you were saying, well, why is there no conflict resolution? There is when there's a balanced, healed masculine and feminine energy. There is.
Right.
There's really no conflict at that point. Like maybe there's conflict, but there's immediate resolution because there's no defensiveness, there's no blame, there's just accountability and there's just perspective and there's sometimes just agreeing to disagreeing, but that's not really the norm in the world today. So that's why there's no conflict resolution, honestly. I guess in a bigger picture is, yeah, you can relate it to the male and female energies, that they're wounded, they're not balanced, they're scared. Honestly, that's the one thing I can tell you about men and women. Men, women, any attachment style, avoidant, anxious, disorganized, whatever you want to call it.
I've dealt with only avoidant in my life, and I have such a hard time with that.
But let me tell you, every single one, at the end of the day, no matter how you want to paint it, are fucking terrified. Terrified. They're both, maybe for different reasons, but at the end of the day, they're all scared. Men and women, all attachment styles, all types of relationships. At the end of the day, they're terrified. Everyone's terrified of being hurt. Everyone's terrified of being left. Everyone's terrified of being alone. And it comes out in different ways.
I have a question. Do you think possibly the childhood traumas that might have made you be a little bit more inverted, but at the same point, once you're starting to heal, you're able to realize the unhealed version of you? Does that help you think that it helps the conflict resolution or lack of conflict? Because they get to see, I believe a lot of people, you don't really exist. Mm-hmm. That's all ego. You are really just the perception mirrored, like you were saying, of someone else.
100%.
So once you take out the ego, and Mike Maxwell doesn't exist, it's only Ian's version, Taylor's version. And do you feel, the short question is, the trauma that you go through your life as you heal through that, do you think a more traumatized person could solve the conflict better and quicker now that they're healed from themselves and can project that to the person they're talking to, rather than someone who went through no trauma and now they've had this cookie cutter lifestyle? Ooh. And now they think I've had no trauma, but now they're having conflict with their significant other or whatever it is, and they don't know how to handle it because they don't realize what trauma even is. So as the outside, again, you're watching social media and you're seeing this couple and they look awesome and they're so happy. Meanwhile, this guy's a fucking mental midget because he's never dealt with trauma.
What's up with the word midget, bro?
Meanwhile, you see the other social media guy. Oh, I knew that guy. That guy shot heroin when he was a kid. He almost killed himself. Meanwhile, they have 4 fucking kids. They're happy as shit because he understands what his wife sees and how they could solve that conflict. Are you asking if it makes you more equipped in relationships? Yeah, just through your experience. Have you ever dealt with that? Do you think that helps a lot? Yeah, I think there's obviously it can make you a more traumatizing partner as well if you don't heal from it. And right. I've spoke to him about this, when you don't heal from your trauma, you just become the new traumatizer. That's common as well. But yeah, I personally, I do think that when you've gone through more shit, that you're able to be more understanding of other people's shit. And I do also think that when you haven't gone through as much, it's not, you can call it a mental midget. I don't even know that it's that. I just think it's just you're not aware. That's never existed in your reality. Right. And honestly, if you want to bring it back to me and him, that's definitely been something that was learned between the two of us. Is Taylor a mental midget? Taylor is not a mental midget. He's extremely emotionally intelligent and self-aware. But there's just things that I've gone through that he's kind of what? What does that have to do with right now? And I'm I can't, I don't know. It's just it makes it harder for sure. But I'll do you one better, that it's not even knowing your inner child and healing your inner child that can make you a better partner. When you can actually flip that and see theirs in the moment, it changes a lot. That's what I'm saying. Reflect back to them now through my personal experience. Because I feel like a lot of guys watching this show right now, are going to be all right, let's say someone just came out of a post-suicide attempt, or they just lost their child in a custody battle, and they never think they're going to meet another woman again and have a family. These are emotions that I dealt with growing up, where I was all right, I'm never going to be able to have a relationship because I'm so fucked up. And that's where these people are right now. And I feel with you here, it's nice because they're thinking right now while they're watching this, well, how can I take this negative and turn it into a positive and use this damage to be a better husband, a better father, a better lover? And I feel do you think in your experience... So they're in that stuck spot, and how can they be better? Yeah, how could they... what advice would you give them on listen, I know you're at a dark spot right now, but through healing yourself, I've seen, maybe, I'm not the therapist, but how do you think that they could help better their relationships in the future being all fucked up at their current moment as they heal themselves.
Well, like it depends on what they're all fucked up from. Are you just like referring to childhood still? Like
yeah,
if they went through a lot of stuff or whatever?
It could be a bunch of stuff. It could be an ex-heroin addict. It could be someone who tried killing themselves. It could be
somebody that got cheated on.
It could be someone who lost their kids in custody. It could be, there's a bunch of things.
I think a good place to start, because that's actually been a question that a male did ask me of like, where do I even begin?
Right.
You have to ask yourself like really hard questions, and it's not even the questions that are important. It's the answers. Like you have to ask yourself like, how did I get here? Like, why am I here? And it's not what's paired with that. That's the hardest part, is the accountability. And accountability is not blame. I think a lot of people think accountability means I have to take blame. Like my dad beat the shit out of me when I was younger. I'm not saying that happened to me, but they'll be like, taking accountability doesn't mean blame. It's taking accountability for how it shows up today. Mm-hmm. So it's not just, you don't have to blame yourself for what happened to you, but it's taking inventory of like, okay, how did I get here? And it's not a blame game. It's just the accountability, and it's who am I? Who was I? Who am I today? Who do I want to be, and who do I never want to be ever again?
That's beautiful.
Like
that's the answer right there.
And you can lay it out that way.
That gave me fucking chills.
Because I think everybody knows that. Yeah. Everyone, like personally, that's kind of where the bigger part of my journey began of like, okay, I know who I used to be. I'm not going back to her.
Right.
I don't know who the fuck I am right now, but I do know who I want to be, and I do also know who I never want to be ever again.
And then you start kind of enacting the steps to get there.
Who is she? Who is he? What do they never do? What do they do? And what's hard about that is you might be doing some of those things right now, and it's like, okay, well then what do I have to stop doing? Right. Like who do I have to cut out? What do I have to cut out? And
that's where I feel like that validation comes in, is at this very moment of your life, and you start projecting this change and building your brick wall of happiness and change, and you start thinking something, but you're on the fence, and then an event happens that validates your thought.
Have you guys ever heard of toxic healing?
Do you mean by toxic empowerment?
Maybe.
Because I know all about toxic empowerment.
So I heard, it's that.
Are you referring to therapists that like gas you up when you are the problem?
No. So like he said something about building bricks by bricks to find your happiness, right? So what I've seen a lot of people do over the years, and like, let's look at you and I for a second, right? You and I in the past, when we both were at our darkest and engaging in some of the worst behaviors, we were egotistical, maniacal maniacs. Mm-hmm. But we thought that we were happy, even though we weren't. And we thought that was our pride and stuff. So what I've noticed is that a lot of women and men, they build these bricks up that they think are their route and their roadmap to happiness.
You're not happy, you're protected.
And that's the thing. So now, rather than thinking that they're happy, what they've done is they've shelled themselves off in this wall and this barrier.
Right, that's why
you've developed this safety wall.
You're not triggered. You're not. And in relationships, typically, that's a big reason why people are single.
And the second that they become in one, and I feel like the second that somebody penetrates that wall just a little bit, and they start to feel it crumble, all that happiness is just a facade, because their wounding winds up coming to the fucking surface.
It's not that you weren't happy. It's exactly what you just said, and I just said that you were just protected.
Yeah.
Like I remember right before I met him, I was so confident, and I was so this, and I was so like, I was just like, I remember like when I was like the end of my singleness, I was just like, I thought I was on cloud 9. Like I was just like, so this, so that. And I realized, I look back and I'm like, I was just protected. And like, that's why a lot of people, when they're in relationships, they're like, oh, I was so much happier when I was single. It's like, no, you weren't triggered. You weren't challenged. Right. And obviously it's different if you're in like a shit relationship, but a lot of the times it's because there's this perceived idea of, again, this wall that you talk about that you build around you of like, oh, it's so good here, but it's like, it's just so safe here. And honestly, it's kind of lonely, and you're not really getting much connection in that place. You're not really, maybe you are partying and you're not connecting with people deeply. You're connecting with people on a surface level. There's a lot of like, I don't know, it's not that deep. And so that place might feel happy, and some people prefer to stay there.
Right.
But it's like, it has a ceiling. Like it's not going to get much better.
I just don't think that somebody behind that wall can ever reach their highest level of self.
That's what I mean. There's a ceiling.
And that's the beautiful thing of relationships, because when you are with the right person, you're not growing alongside of them. You're growing in a direct relationship because of that person.
You're like those vines that kind of grow, and then you end up like intertwining.
And then you entwine. Oh, you just gave me the fucking chills, man. Damn, that was a good analogy. Shit.
But it keeps growing. They're like relationships. Honestly, like there's always not that there's always work to be done, meaning like you do have to enjoy the fruits of your labor. And like, you know, even with healing, like you do have to step back and live at some point.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Relationships, like I remember, again, right before I met him, I was like, I did like 90% of my healing. I'm like, and when I get back into a relationship, like maybe I'll have like 10% to like, you know, tweak and like fix. I realized that I was like, oh shit, I did like 20%. And it's not that I didn't do as much as I thought.
It's the triggers.
It's just that you can only do about 20% on your own.
Right.
Like the rest is in a relationship.
Mirror.
You need, I've called like the last year of my life like the fun house, that it's just like when you go to a carnival and there's mirrors everywhere, because everywhere with him, with my mom, with my sister, it's like lesson after lesson after lesson where it's like, oh my God, I just see me in everybody. Like everybody is reflecting back things to, and it's not just romantic relationships. Romantic relationships are the biggest trigger, but it's familial relationships as well. It's friendships that like they'll spit back to you the things that you don't like about yourself. Like, and it's a lot of the reason why people leave, where they're like, oh, I don't want to be here, or like I don't want to be friends with her, I don't want to be in a relationship with her anymore, because you don't really want to look in the mirror as what's happening.
Taylor. So, 2 questions. What's your definition of what true love is? Okay, because I'd love to see your emotional psyche come out a little bit.
I will give you the answer right now, and it's an answer that you're probably not going to love that much, but I don't think a concept like that would be really like articulated into like circumstance and so I would just say that it's like, I don't want to sound like cliche, but it's like the highest form of something that's not really able to be worded. It would just be felt, and you would just understand if and when you feel it, and it's higher than even what I think it is.
Have you noticed in your relationship, when we're discussing this mirror, that anything in you maybe has been mirrored back about yourself that maybe was a little hard during your relationship, that you kind of had to look at and be like, all right, like I've navigated my life a certain way and I got to go off course and fix this shit? Because when I talk to you, I see nothing wrong with you. You know what I'm saying? And he said it the first episode, the energy that he puts out is at such a high vibrational frequency and so pure. And I mean that when I say it. So like, I'm interested to see.
I think when I'm not putting that energy out, when I don't truly wake up and feel that way, I try to actually not put myself around anybody or be in situations where I can put off an energy that's not that.
So energy. You never want to act like you're not in alignment with who you truthfully are.
Yeah, so I think
if you are, you're just staying away from
the downside of it. Sometimes I actually stay away, like, and she might be like, "What's wrong with you?" And I'm like, "Nothing's wrong with you," or you know, nothing's really wrong. But
people think that's fucked up, and that's a phenomenal way to go about life. Is you're allowed to be a cocoon of your own self-healing.
Yeah, but for how long?
As long as you need.
Okay.
So I'm a huge believer, and I consider myself pretty successful family-wise. And if someone was like, hey, what's the one thing is, and it sounds so like cliche, but there's the guy's happiness if the woman doesn't exist, and there's the woman's happiness if the guy didn't exist.
Correct.
If that's not coherent and the same, when the relationship starts, it's never going to work. And the reason why is someone is always going to need the other happiness to create dual happiness.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
It might be a little smidge, but then that little smidge can get bigger, and it's always off balance. And I feel like timing's a lot. How many people have you met at one part of your life? You know, you were 22 years old, and now you're 35. They go, if I would have fucking talked to this girl when I was 35, we probably would be married. Or vice versa. Oh, I'm 35. If I would have saw you at 22, just off the instant conversation, we'd probably be married with 10 kids right now. I feel like it's all timing, trauma, and then once you start the relationship and you say, okay, I'm happy without you, you're happy without me, we're going to agree to both be happy together. Now you start the self-reflection, and like what I would do is, I'm a fucking weirdo, I would study characters in a show. Yeah, this is, it sounds fucking weird.
It is weird.
But, so like I invoke gods and I would invoke Odin.
That's not weird.
And, well, it gets weirder. So Odin like, is patience and wisdom, right? I don't think you get patience and wisdom from a fucking book. You get it from experience.
Yeah, you get it through whatever life throws at you.
But then where do you start? So I would watch shows of very stressful characters and how they controlled patients. Peaky Blinders, Ragnar and Vikings, Tom Hardy in Taboo.
Oh, my favorite. My favorite.
Brad Pitt in Snatch. Go watch the clip where his mother burns alive in a fucking trailer, and how he, like a fucking gentleman, relaxes, detoxes himself, takes himself away from society to heal, then gets his revenge. He doesn't just snap like a psychopath.
It's not reactive.
Right. And it trains you. I did this for years.
So it's so interesting that you're saying this, because when she was talking about before, like kind of like, who do you want to be? Step into that person. I was reading something recently, and it was like a little experiment that they did with singers, and they would tell them, like, sing as quiet as you can. And they would measure a decibel, and they would say, no, quieter, quieter, quieter. And it was, they could only get so low. And then they would tell them, I want you to pretend like you're like a mouse in the most quiet orchestra in the world, and now sing as soft as you can. And the decibels would be like so low. And this whole thing was about, and they even reference actors. A lot of times they'll put costume and makeup on, because this whole thing was about seeing yourself as somebody else and learning, like, through characters and stepping into this other character that you're not. You know,
look at Christian Bale or Danny, the guy that plays the Butcher.
Heath Ledger as the Joker.
They stay in that character.
Right, you really step into character. But
Daniel Day-Lewis.
You kind of have breakthroughs when you can step into a new character, and if you can maybe put yourself around the right people or consume the right media. Then maybe you can start to put yourself in these good character shoes that have these better traits about how you want to deal with things, you know, and in a stressful situation is a good example, because if you're a hothead and you're a certain kind of way, and then you're learning from these guys, maybe it's fake, but regardless, it seems like they're honorable and they're respectful, and it's how you would want to conduct yourself. Then maybe next time something happens, if you can rewind a little bit.
The energy in the show is not fake.
Right.
The reaction is not fake. That's happening in the situation, can happen in life, and how they react. You know, bro, Taboo is we've
already spoken about the show. One of the best shows ever created.
Or like See on Apple TV with Jason Momoa.
Yeah.
Like, these motherfuckers are blind, and he now has to protect
warriors,
2 kids from witch hunters. And like, it sounds so silly, but like, if you want to learn you need to learn to be a protect. If someone's like, yo, I see how you protect your kids, you move a certain way, like, I could tell your kids know they're protected. What should I do? I'd say go watch C. It's like, don't just watch it with a fucking bag of popcorn. Go watch 3 seasons back to back to back and study what this guy does, how he wakes up, how he moves, how he meditates, and feel the energy in the show. And it sounds batshit crazy.
It's not. Now that you've explained it,
so that's what I would do. And now, then you take that theory, and then there's something called the cognitive subconscious, which is everyone has the thought in their head. Not a lot of people, ours are in an accent, have a second voice that speaks to the voice in your head. And they talk about it in Untethered Soul by Michael Springer, right? Everyone is this present conscious moment. But how come Joe Schmo gets cut off and gets out of the car and shoots the guy that just drove? Because he has no cognitive subconscious. Why don't we do that? Because we're mad. An emotion is an emotion. It's the same for everyone. There is no different emotion. Mad is mad.
Like anger is anger.
Right. Why is it different? Well, because Joe Schmo has no cognitive subconscious and is just going to go out and go fucking shoot that guy. We have the same quick emotion.
Yep.
And as we get out of the car, we go, wait a second, I'm not going to jail for this. And it's the same thing. So when you could take that cognitive, when you can train yourself from the patients and then not worry about their happiness, because you have to control your own happiness. So instead of saying, fuck you, I don't care about you, I think what you said was great is, I'm just going to not start my day today with you. And you, having your own happiness and respecting mine, can say, you know what, I respect that. So it's Tuesday, we'll catch up tomorrow night.
We just came full circle with
that. That was and I just, because I've been like hearing, I'm a big believer in leaving the other person alone. It's just my opinion. Still, but a lot of people, it takes a lot of balls to tell someone like, I just don't feel right, and I don't want to project that onto someone else. And if you didn't know him, that's just some cliche bullshit.
No,
but that's how he is.
That's
and I
super
think that's a
important.
Fucking awesome line.
Don't you see the line in between though, that there should be a little bit of do you see how that could be taken the wrong way? Like,
yes.
if you don't have
100%.
the knowledge you have
100%.
and you go and watch the movies you're talking about, do you see how that can turn into, the answer is shut down.
Right.
Don't say anything.
Right.
Just keep it
100%.
to yourself, stuff it down. Like, there's a difference, and I don't think people are aware of it. Like, there's a difference difference between being aware of like waking up and being like, I'm in it today and I don't want to like bleed on to anybody else. So like, I'm just going to like kind of go into my cave and I'll come out when I'm ready, versus like suppressing it and repressing it and being like, oh no, don't feel this. Don't feel this.
So I want to ask you something then. So where does somebody then figure out that line? How does somebody figure out? Because I agree with everything that Mike just said. There are days where I just want to sit home and I want to be with my dog.
Right, but now let's say you had a girlfriend and she's come get the fuck out of bed. How is that going to help you?
But hold on. So I agree that her happiness and my happiness have to be separate, but then we also have to bring them together.
You communicate in that area.
So the thing is I would gladly communicate saying, hey, baby, listen, nothing's wrong with you. I'm going to sit with the dog today. I'm going to take my day. I'm going to microdose my mushrooms, smoke my weed, do this, go for a walk, go for a hike, yada, yada, yada. When there's conflict, okay, and now somebody's irritated and they're using that as an excuse, what do you say to the person who is using that wall and that barrier that they've built up that they feel is happiness, and they're using, I just need time, I need space, I need this, I need that, as an excuse for them just not being healed? Where does somebody draw?
You're not gonna like my answer.
Where does somebody draw that line then?
It's none of your fucking business. You give them what they're asking for. Whether it's healthy or not is not on you. If somebody's being like, if someone's being non-responsive and being like, nothing, I'm fine. Okay, you're fine. I'm going to go continue on with my day or my life then, you know, like the healthy barrier is what I said is like the healthy response is like, babe, it's not you. I'm having a day. I love you. I'll talk to you later. I'll talk to you tomorrow even, but it's not you. Version. That's the good thing to do. Right. But when it's like, I'm just not answering you now, or like, no, I like nothing, I'm fine. Or like, I just need some space. Like, okay.
Go take it.
That's what you like. You have to give people what they ask for, and it's not just.
You got to push into the direction that they're pushing you.
Sometimes it's spiteful, but honestly it works. There's been times where I've done it with him, where like women, we do this all the time, where it's like, "What's wrong?" and it's like nothing. And it's like, he'll be like, okay. And I'm like, why didn't you ask me 5 more times?
I can picture you doing that also. If you would have
asked me on the 5th time, I would have told you, you know? But like, you can't do that. And like, maybe he does it being like, you know, I don't being a certain way sometimes, but it works because it has taught me I have to tell him the first time he asks. I can't, because he's going to give me what it is I ask for. So if I say like, I just want to be alone right now, he's not going to be like, are you sure? Like, he's going to be like, okay. And I'm like, no, like, you're supposed to come closer. But like, you do have to give people what they ask for, because one, it's respectful that like, if that's what you want, that's what I'll give you. But it does, if they're going about it in an unhealthy way, like I know I have, it does cause me to reflect of like, I need to be more vulnerable.
But that's also because you're self-aware though. And that
even
goes
if
back.
You're not, even if you're not self-aware, you might, like, let's just go to like the toxic side of the spectrum. If you're not self-aware at all, yeah, you're just going to blame that person. And you're just going to make them the asshole.
They're the villain
like,
in the story.
But that's what they'll always do. But if you're even a little self-aware, like a little bit, you will be forced to like sit in the shit and have to be like, oh, like, well, this isn't what I didn't just get my needs met. Like I just did the opposite. Like this isn't what I wanted. Like I wanted closeness. Like I didn't really want space. Like I need to ask for that if that's what I want, that's you know, like that. But that, like, that's it, the answer is easy. I'm sorry, is simple. It's not easy. It's Correct. Not easy if I'm in a bitchy mood to be like, can you give me a hug and give me a kiss? That's not easy. Like what's easier is to like shut down and kind of just like go about like my energy for the rest of the day. That's not the best energy. And a lot of the times I'll say to people, and it's true for most of life honestly, is like, do what's hard, because what's hard is usually what's right, because what's easy is usually what we've been conditioned to do, and what we've been conditioned to do typically in relationships and even in life sometimes is not the right answer.
You know what it is for me? For so many years, just to speak about like a bit of a personal experience, I was cold. So I would close doors on people and never look back and do this and do that.
For a reason.
Yeah, because I was
protecting yourself.
I had my safety net, and I was addicted to that self-isolation when my trauma would arise. Now, being healed and going through all my journeys and being that masculine healed energy, like I want somebody to wear me as a fucking backpack 24/7. Like I want to be on them. So like, what do you say for somebody like me who is a mush?
I want to be the little spoon.
Yo, straight up. I love
being the little
spoon. Can you even be the little spoon?
I don't know what that is.
No, you could.
He doesn't cuddle.
Wait, if Jill cuddles you
like
from the
if
back.
you were held from behind.
He's like, no, I don't want that.
Little spoon.
You're bugging. You have no idea
I get why
level of
women
comfort.
love it because you get like engulfed.
I mean, my kid
don't know
does
why
it.
men
Bro,
love
I'm
it
telling
so
you,
much.
like I love
does it to
being
me.
the little fucking spoon, bro. Like wrap
Men
around
love
me
it.
like a tortilla. And like, what do you say for somebody like me who's like that? And there are people like me, whether they're healed masculine energy or healed feminine energy or just mushes in general.
Yeah.
If they're with somebody who's not like that, what's the advice?
Not like what?
Just not into that whole
Not mushy,
Yeah,
or
not mushy.
cold, or they're cold and they're shut down and they're not available.
Let's do a compilation of both.
Well,
Okay.
if they're just straight up cold, then that's like there's no like median for that. Like, would you want to try to train them?
That's what I'm
Never.
saying. If
Never. I would never want to train somebody to be
else.
something they're
There's
not.
a billion
I would
people in
never
the
want
world.
to train somebody to be
Right.
something they're
Body
not.
warmer.
But
Right. If somebody, so the two examples, you're mushy, whether you're a man or a woman, and the person you're with, we'll use the toxic example and just someone being themselves example. So there's a toxic example of someone's not emotionally available to you. They're shut down for a reason. They're pulling away. Like they're actually creating space. Again, that kind of goes back to like, you give that person what they're asking for, but it's not that you give them the space and you remain. Like that's your cue to leave. Like this person's not this person. This is another reason why people overstay is like this, like be honest with yourself. Like this is not what you want. Don't try to change it. Like you have to take people for who they are and what they are. And if that's what someone's giving you and that's not meshing well with you, your responsibility, going back to like, you're not to blame, but your accountability and your responsibility is to walk away. And if you don't, that's on you. Now, if you're dating somebody who, let's just say, is kind of like him, like a healthy individual, but like they're just not like
you're not a mushy person, are
he
you?
is. He's not mushy, but
Right.
Taylor's not animated. You know,
Right.
Taylor's not like loud. Like he's not. He's. I'm not like outing him, but he's not. He's not mushy, but he's a sensitive guy. Like he has emotions, but like. If someone's like not as like I feel that like I'm like a more mushy person, but if you're with somebody that's like not mushy, every single person in this world, male and female, every single person wants to be loved for exactly who they are. Nobody wants to be morphed. Nobody wants to be changed. Nobody wants to be made to believe that if they were more of something or less of something, they'd be more lovable. So you love that person for exactly who they are. Going back to asking like, what is love? It's meeting people where they're at and loving them for who they are today. That's not encouraging growth, you know, for people to do better. But like, you don't try to change that person. And if your wish is to change that person, you don't love that person. And it's not that you don't feel feelings of love for them, but that's where the act of love comes in is you're not loving this person. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to make this person be who you need, not who they want to be. And now you're changing them because like, even if I'm like, can you be more animated? And he's like, yeah, all right. I get like he's not Taylor anymore. So who am I loving?
But you can change a little bit though.
That's
like,
why I said there's room for growth.
Grow together.
There's room for growth.
Together.
Yeah,
like
there's
if you
room
were
for
like,
growth
hey,
and compromise for sure. But like you're not going to try to make a doctor an artist.
Right,
like
of
that's
course.
not who they are.
So like if you weren't a mushy guy, but you still had love, like, hey babe, maybe before we go to bed, you can come to bed 15 minutes
cuddle me
early
more?
and spoon
Yeah,
or whatever.
Which
Like,
is
of course.
and that, again, that's
Absolutely.
growing together. So what you're
Absolutely.
saying, because now let me simplify this to the audience like Taylor does. You love someone not because of their good qualities. You love them in spite of the things that maybe don't mesh properly to your standards of what you're looking for. So you love somebody.
Well, what are you loving?
Listen,
you say you love somebody.
You love somebody.
What are you loving? What is the love?
Well,
That's what I'm
love,
saying.
That's
what
when, in my
love
opinion,
is.
where love becomes an act. Where it like I never like.
I don't think you can explain love. Same thing with God. There's a big saying about there's two guys talking to a priest, and the priest, well, if you can't explain God to me, then how am I going to believe him? And the guy turns around and goes, you use 13% of your human brain. If God was able to be explained to someone who uses 13% of their brain, that's not someone that I'm gonna.
That's not the God.
That's not the God that I want to be. So the fact that you can't explain it is why I worship him.
Right.
And I feel like that's what you said with
that's
love.
where I think in our realm when it becomes a choice.
We'd love everyone if we really understood
Right.
what love is.
There is this connection, and people say all the time, like, "Oh, how do you guys get along?" And I don't even know. It just is.
But it's also,
and when it's not, I know it's not. You know, like
you do know. Well, of course.
But when it
you know.
is,
And
it is. You know?
every single person. And I think this also goes back to like where we started of like why don't things work out? Like why do people leave so
remember where we
easily?
started,
Of like
to be
you were
honest.
saying, like in dating now, like why do people give up so easily? Every single person in this world that you date, marry, relationship, whatever, every single person is one, going to hurt you unintentionally sometimes, and two, is disappointing in one way or another. Like that's just facts. And it doesn't mean that like you're a disappointment. There might be things about me that he's like, maybe I wish she was a little bit more of this or less of that, or I wish she was into this, or I wish, like, it doesn't mean that he doesn't love me or he hates me, but like, it's not even like a full sense of like, oh, I'm so disappointed, but meaning like people will let you down sometimes. And like, maybe, yeah, your partner's not as mushy as you want them to be. That could be like the disappointment that they carry, but it doesn't mean that you leave. Like, like when you said that the compromise comes in, but you definitely don't try to change them. And if it's so
big difference in compromise.
Yeah. And if you really need to change them in order for you to be happy, you need to go somewhere else. Because it's not fair to anybody at that point. And it's just like I said, I think with like trauma nowadays and like childhood trauma and relational trauma, we try to make people who we need them to be, not who we want them to be. Meaning like, I want you to tiptoe around my traumas. Meaning like, I don't really like being alone. Therefore, like I need you to be with me all the time. That's one of my needs that I have. But it's like, is it a need or is it like an untended to wound? Because there's a difference, and you're responsible for the wound part.
Like,
you know,
like neglect wounding. That's
like it's like if like I have so many. Like I hate to say it, but it's mostly females, and it's like he's just such a bad texter. Like he never texts me. Like I wish he would text me all day long. And I'm like, think about this though for a second. Is it actually that your need is not being met, that you need more communication, or if this could be different, how would you want it to look? Meaning, would you wish that he's texting you all day long? Or do you wish that you were more secure and more confident with not hearing from your boyfriend for 10 hours and you can go about your day happily? And they're like, well, that's the answer. I'm like, well, that's not a need. That's a wound. Like that is your responsibility. Now there's no right or wrong answer. How do they react when you say that? Are they like open to you saying that? Like, are they like, what the fuck did you say? My clients that I jive with from day one. I can know in one session if we're not going to jive, and I will never hear from them again, and I can hang up with those people and know I won't hear from them again, and happily, like not like I don't want them, but I'm like, we're not going to jive because my people are people that are like,
they're not going to be open to you.
The first session I tell them,
like, well, I think this, you know?
Yeah, right.
And you're like, okay, well, if you think that, then good luck, because it's not working for you, but all right, go find somebody else that's going to tell you that you're doing the right thing and make you feel better about yourself.
100%.
Yeah. No, my clients are all like, I tell them in the first session, I'm going to be what you need, not what you want. And like, I'm going to hold you accountable and I'm going to call you out on your shit. Yeah. And honestly, that's the only thing that worked for me, is when my therapist looked at me, especially in the beginning of our relationship, when I was like having my own shit come up. And when she looked at me and was like, I love you and I know you better than anyone in this world, but like, you're being the problem right now. And I was just like, oh, I didn't want to hear that. But like, it made me change. Like, it made me be like, all right, I can't be like this anymore. So like, no, the people I work with they're aware of that, and most of them will come in, and it's usually because they've tried their own ways so many times that they're like, all right, I'm done with my way. Like,
do you deal a lot with dual couples at the same time, or one, like the boyfriend or husband? And
so I'll do a lot of one-on-one separately. I just actually recently started working with this couple where I'll see her, I'll see him, and then I'll see her, I'll see him, and then I'll see them. I'll see her, I'll see him, and then I'll see them. But the nature of that is really me just hearing their perspectives. When we come into the session of the three of us, it's as if I know nothing about either one of you. Like, I'm just kind of the mediator here, but I'm not like, oh, remember when you told me that? Like, no, I'm not like, I'm not like stirring some shit up of like, wait a second, you're leaving something out that she told me. But
have you noticed that people come in differently when, like, you know what? I don't even want to ask that question because that would be intrusive to that couple.
You can ask.
So
like generally.
Okay, so my question, a general question, is when you're dealing with someone alone, the other person alone, and then they come in, does the story begin to change?
Yes, but I don't think it's for the reasons that you think.
Okay,
it's not. Yeah, there could be ways of it, like, oh, I left that out on purpose.
Oh, that's what I was asking.
It's not. It's actually what I'm finding is it's. And this is like a really beautiful realization for them, and even for me. Like, I learned so much from the people that I work with, that it gives me so much perspective. But I'm like, wait, she was not intentionally leaving that out, and he was not intentionally leaving that out. That's just his perspective and her perspective, and something that was the end of the world to her, he forgot to mention. He didn't even realize. But like, what's beautiful about that though is when they come together is she's thinking probably like, you just don't care. That's why you're not doing this. But he's like, oh no, I didn't even think twice about that. Yeah. Like, I'm so sorry. Like that didn't even cross my mind. So
and it's just, they just never communicated.
It's most of the problems that I see in all relationships, not the ones that I work with, not every relationship, is honestly, it's not always incompatibility. It's misunderstanding. It's just, I thought you meant something.
A lack of comprehension, not
comprehension,
communication.
which does come from communication.
You like that?
Okay.
That is true.
Thank you.
Just because I hear the words you're saying doesn't mean I know what the fuck you're saying.
Yeah, and that does come from communication, though. Like, if you're, there's like, we're not always going to understand each other, but if there's like a willingness to even understand that I don't understand, like that's okay too. That it's like, I don't really know why you're scared of that, but like I respect that you are, and like I'll do what I can.
How do you get people then to get to that point where they want to be able to comprehend? Because again, like just branching
I don't know
off,
that you always can.
That's so give me
there's
that
things
answer.
about me that I know that he'll never fully understand, and vice versa.
Yeah,
because we're not from the same world.
Do you try to? Is it important that you at least, for any relationship, that you try and comprehend, or do you just kind of find that common ground where you're like,
you could try to
I'm
comprehend.
never going to understand, but you know what? I respect your feelings. I value how you feel. Validating how you feel.
Yeah.
But this just,
respect
it's
where I'm
not
coming
resonating
from.
with me.
Respect where I'm coming from, for sure. Like there's things that you won't be like, I don't want to bring up like bad traumas, but there's things about like, you know, if a woman dealt with sexual assault when she's younger, her husband might not get it. And there's nothing he can do to be like, oh, I understand, babe. Like, I know where you're coming from, but he can respect what happened to her. But like, and accept that it's happened to her and accept how it's showing up in her life and in the relationship that they're both choosing to be in.
Right.
But it's honestly a fine line, because like I said, there's a huge difference between like, just understand me and just accept where I'm coming from if it's damaging. And if you're not doing anything to do better, meaning like, I can't just show up and be like, I was cheated on 10 times. So like, you have to check in with me all the time and you have to be like aware of that. Like, he can be like, I'm sorry that happened to you, but like, I didn't create the wound. So like, don't bleed out on me.
Yeah, don't bring your past into
I'll
my
do what I
present
can.
with you. Right.
I'll do what I can in the time being while you're healing this, to be more cognizant of like, I'll check in with you when I'm out with the boys, or like, whatever, like,
that's wild.
I know, but I'm saying like that could be understanding.
I
if
agree
it's
with
like,
you on that.
What I mean though is that like, if you're healing it yourself at the moment, not like, I need you to share your location and I need to look at your phone because that's what I need from you because I was cheated on. It's more like, I'm trying to fix this. Can you just work with me right now? And I agree with you. You don't have to check in.
Yeah, it goes back to someone being happy, they're happy. But the comprehension is huge. And I feel especially a good point to bring up that I went through that I regret is for the fathers that are leaving in a divorce and the mother is now taking custody of the kid. If there's one thing I could really touch from personal experience on this, before you wild the fuck out and she's a fucking bitch and all these other names and make sure that she comprehends your hurt. And no matter what you did, if you cheated on her, she cheated on you, whatever it is, the kids are not involved. And when you sit down, instead of just being fuck this bitch and do this, and now the kids are witnessing this and, fuck her, take the kids, and you cut the kids off, just make sure you sit down with her as the bigger man, because that's your fucking job, and make sure that she comprehends your hurt for moving on with the kid, and not just stressing how mad you are.
No, you need to communicate that. She can't comprehend it if you don't say it.
I was doing for 9 months, I didn't see my fucking kid when he was born.
Yeah.
And I was mad. I was angry. I was suicidal. I was a narcissist. I was just yelling how mad I was. And then we went to court. And as I started realizing, like, yo, this chick just doesn't know.
And now you're an unhinged
what
asshole.
the fuck I'm saying. She's hearing the words.
Yeah.
She doesn't know what I mean. And by the time I damaged her so much that by the time I realized it, which my wife now is the one that helped me reestablish a relationship with my ex, when I realized it, it took me so many years to reprogram her brain of me damaging her verbally. That I'm like, holy shit, she just never comprehended me. She heard the words, but didn't know what I meant. And now at my kid at 13, we're finally at the point where I know how to speak to her differently, where she's going to comprehend. I know what words not to say, because to me, I'm a cursor as an adjective. Oh, where's this fucking practice? But for someone who comprehends that as you're fucking cursing at me,
it comes all volatile and
so
shit
now
like that.
I'm mad, but I'm not mad at her. I missed the practice. Like, oh, where the fuck is this school? oh, I don't know why you have to curse at me. And I used to be like, yo, fuck you. Why are you mad at that? But now it's like, I understand. I respect that you comprehend my attitude with these words of like, a curse is a curse. So I take that out, and it helps a lot.
I have a question, and it's really for both of you then. So you asked her a question, where does somebody start? So if you're saying that comprehension and stuff, but somebody has to be able to communicate properly. So where does a father who's going through what you went through, where do they start? Where does somebody
it's her answer that she said. So
it's not the easy answer.
It's realizing where you were in the past, though, that you fucked up.
Yeah.
Calling, you don't start, I don't care if she's wrong. And I use the analogy all the time. You could walk in to your girlfriend or wife blowing a guy right there. Okay? If you go, what the fuck, you stupid bitch? And she turns around now and goes, what'd you just call me? I'm a bitch? And now goes around in her mind, right or wrong.
No, but when you were yelling at your ex-wife, like this is what you would do, Ian, to answer your question. When this happened, when he was 9 months old, and you were cursing and yelling at her, what were you saying? What were the things that were coming out of your mouth? That she was not, like, were you saying fuck you? What were the things coming out of your mouth?
I would say stuff like, when am I going to see my fucking kid?
Yeah.
Now, I thought...
What were you feeling, though? That's what was coming out of your mouth.
I can't physically put into words.
You were probably feeling, I am so scared, I am never going to see him again, and that you're taking him away from me.
Yeah, it was just, right. But it really wasn't...
That's not what came out.
Right, yeah.
That's what I mean.
So what besides saying I shouldn't have cursed, like looking back now, what would you actually have
I wouldn't have acted so... I don't even know what the word is.
Erratically or
impulsively? Yeah, erratic. Erratic. Yeah. Like, the thoughts that went through
erratic.
Erratic.
So, he's like, I wouldn't have been so erotic in that courtroom.
I think back to the emotions and the feelings that I had in that time of my life, and I physically get scared. Yeah. Like, I can actually feel take the anger that you get when you break up with a girl, and she just cheated on you, and now you're this emotional tornado that you don't even know what day it is, right? And then you text her and she reads the text and doesn't answer, and you know she's with the guy she just cheated. Imagine that fucking rage and multiply it by 10. And that was my life for 9 fucking months with no one to vent to and no one to go to. And in my head, I'm yelling and I'm saying, I'm cursing because that's just the way I am, and I'm yelling, and I'm thinking, you're taking my kid away from me. Meanwhile, I'm scaring her to I'm this 280-pound fucking animal, out of my mind, and she's like, how the fuck am I going to give this child up to you? Yeah. Where am I, it just spiraled out, where if I could go back and have the same anger and have the same tornado, study my characters from the show, take a little bit more patience, and say, how am I going to express this so that she understands my hurt? Take the curse words out, go to a diner instead of over text, talk on the phone so you could hear my voice. The
tonality is super important.
And I would have done all that over, and I would have made sure that in person, looking at her face, I'm not leaving this diner until I know you comprehend what I'm saying and feel my emotion. Because then at that point, now it's, all right, fuck you, you're not getting it. But it would never get to that point.
No, and I get that. If you're getting there.
Yep. But I regret it to this day, and I lost so much of my kid's life.
Don't regret it, though, because you now have been able to learn from that. Right. And that, I feel like, should be the only thing that you take away. Yeah, you may have lost years of your kid's life, and I understand that. But without you going through that, it made you realize
what you mistake was a mistake until afterwards.
Look at what she said. Who am I in the past?
Right.
Who am I now? And who do I do? I just got the chills. I just got the chills.
I wish I would have thought, if someone would have told me, that's what I had to be told.
Yeah, but if you were able to think that at the time, your whole life would have been different.
If someone would have held my hand the day that, I remember the exact day that I fucking snapped. If someone would have held my hand and said what you said, just take a deep breath. Who were you? What are you right now? Who do you not want to be? And I could have just took a 5-minute detox and just meditated to myself and thought that, the entire trajectory of my life would have been different. At the same time now...
It's that pause we were talking about.
But at the same time now, the reason why I asked before about the trauma helping the therapy is that trauma made me a better dad, 100%. In my opinion, to my full-time kids.
That's what I mean. Like, you didn't know it was a mistake. You don't know what you're doing is wrong until like, you don't know a mistake is a mistake until after, even if it's seconds after. But when you do things like that in the moment, you use the word scared before, which is so important. Like, people will act out of alignment, erratically, hurtfully, whatever it is, when they are scared, and they think that they're doing what's best in the moment. Like, you didn't think, like, if I keep doing this, she's gonna take him away. You think, I'm gonna scare her enough that she'll fucking crack, and I'll get to see my son. Like, people always act even hurtfully, and like I said, and painfully when they're scared. Like, even honestly, thinking back to like your horrific story of when you were a child, like even bullies, like they're doing what they think in the moment is going to get what they're looking for. Like, when children are so mean when they're younger, it's like they're thinking they'll fit in, they'll get attention, they'll get friends, they'll get love, they'll get liked.
They were trying to fit in with what they did.
I'm not saying that they were trying to fit in, but I'm saying they're also thinking like, oh, this is what everyone's doing. Like, I get it. They're not thinking like, oh, this is a big mistake, this is bad. Maybe right after, maybe 10 years later. But in the moment, when there's fear present, people will do whatever they think they need to do in that moment to, I don't want to be the one getting kicked on right now. So like, I'm just going to be the one that kicks, like I'll just kick with everybody else. Like, they don't want to be on the outside of that. So even like with your thing of like, I'm just going to scream and curse and like, that'll scare her. Like, that'll do it. And then afterwards you're like, well, that didn't work. Yeah. But like, that's how you learn.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
And it's a random question.
Oh, I don't care. Yeah.
Okay, because for some reason, I don't know why my mind just went to here. It's a completely different...
All good.
Bro, what do you say to people that have been professionally gaslit? Yeah, I know.
It's hard. I dealt a lot with that.
So I dealt a lot with gaslighting.
There's a difference. Like, there's gaslighting. There's gaslighting. Like, so
I'll give you an example. When I was with my ex years ago, I caught her cheating multiple times. And every time, and granted, I had codependency issues. I had a lot of my own shit I had to work through. So like, as traumatic as that relationship was, best relationship I've ever been in. I was a stepfather for 3 years, and it made all of my wounding come to surface for me to have that self-realization, like, yo, wake the fuck up. But I remember catching her cheating and then being made to feel like I was crazy. And that stuck with me for so long. So... From
her or from a therapist?
No, from her. Like, okay. I would...
No, just because you said professionally before, so it made me...
So my question to you is, how does somebody start the process?
Well, that question's actually not as random as you thought it was, because she was gaslighting in that moment.
So it was random off of what you two were just talking about.
Well, not really.
No?
Because she was wrong for what she did, and she knew she was wrong, so she was willing to do whatever she could, hurtful or not, in that moment to protect herself and be like, that's not what happened. Like, you're making shit up. That's not what happened.
So then it was on the same frequency of what you guys
were doing.
But there's a difference, right? When I said that there's a difference between gaslighting, is I think that there's a ton of gaslighting that happens nowadays, but like, I also don't think that it's as intentional as people think. I think people, one, have different perceptions. So in the moment, it's like, that's not what happened. That's not what I said. And it's like, are you fucking kidding me right now? That's exactly what happened. And it's like, no, it's not. And it's like, oh my God, you're making, but like, I don't think that person's like, ooh, let me get in your head right now and make you think that's, their perception is, that's not what happened.
Right.
And then I think, of course, there's like, the narcissist side of the spectrum of like, I know that's not what happened, but I'm going to twist your brain right now to make you think that that's not what happened. And I think that that's another reason why the term narcissist in dating now, especially with women, is thrown around so loosely, that it's like, oh, I was a victim of narcissistic abuse. And I'm not like saying that like that's not real, but I don't think there's as many real like NPDs, like real narcissists out there as people think when they're dating. Like real narcissists like get off on your pain. Like it's curated. Like there's a process to it. Like but I think, one, we're all a little narcissistic. And two, I think when there's traits like, well, but he gaslit me, but he ghosted me. It's like, he was a narcissist. It's like, no, he just like, maybe he was an asshole, but like there's a difference. So I think when there's gaslighting present, people get in their heads of, oh my God, like I'm dating a narcissist right now, or this person's really trying to twist my reality, but they're actually just trying to protect theirs.
So let's say somebody is not just trying to protect theirs, and it's not that falsified perception.
We're going to toxic realm.
We're going
they're really
because
trying
those
to twist
exist.
You right now. Yeah,
and I'm telling you, as somebody,
they absolutely do.
My past dating history, I have dated narcissists. Okay, now granted, when I have been single and I was unhealed and I was going through all my own shit, I was a narcissist. I would lie, manipulate. I've been there. That was 5+ years ago, where I was a terrible human being. But the thing is I've been on the opposite end of that toxic gaslighting, and it took me a long time to unravel my brain and rewire myself. So
it messes you up.
So my way of healing is different than everybody else's. Yeah. I went into psychedelics. That's not for everybody, okay?
It's not for everybody.
So
how do you heal from it?
How does somebody heal, for those watching?
Yeah.
How does somebody heal from toxic where do they start that journey?
So I will tell you that I dated someone like that when I was like 19, so I was still young and very impressionable, and it was the shortest relationship ever. I think it was like 6 months, and it was just like that. Like it was like a real like narcissistic behavior.
Yeah.
It was like twisting the reality, and like I remember coming out of it and being like, did what I think happened not actually happen? Like you start gaslighting yourself now of like, you're making stuff up. That's not what really happened. So in my personal experience, how I came out of it not using psychedelics is like, there's a lot of compassion and self-forgiveness involved of like that happened. Like that was really bad and that was really traumatic. But I think where the barrier and the healing comes from is the lack of trust that you have with yourself after that happens, of like you start to like kind of question your own judgment.
Oh my God,
for the person that you chose, for the things that they said.
And maybe I shouldn't have said this when I said that.
So now you're right. Now you're like, oh my God, maybe I made him or her treat me that way. Like maybe it was my fault. So a big part of that is cultivating trust in yourself again. And like a really small place to start that I start with people is like, it sounds really small, but like I'll tell them like, stop calling your best friend before you make a decision and make a decision.
Oh, shit.
You know, like if you're thinking about, do I paint my room blue or purple?
Good.
I like that.
Let me call my friend, like paint the room the color that you think you should paint it. Like if you're contemplating,
good,
do I start this?
Little
do I like
tiny things.
Yeah, little tiny things.
Nuances.
Like it doesn't have like again, like so often we'll be like, hey, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? Or should I quit my job? Or
have
should I
grace
just
and
do
trust
it?
in yourself.
Just do it. Like
and
start with the small things. Like
I like
and
that.
especially when you come out of that abuse, like it could be something as small as like, what you want for dinner that night. Like what do you want? Ask yourself what you want. What comes to your mind? Cool, go make that. Go eat that.
That's an awesome question and answer.
Tiny places to start.
I deal a lot with that, and that's a great
you start to trust yourself. Like it has to start on a smaller scale.
Yeah.
But that I personally think that's where like the recovery comes from, is learning to trust. Like I made a bad call. Like I dated a bad person, and like that reality sucked, and I know my reality and I can stand by it, and I don't need someone to tell me what they think it was, and I'm going to continue on choosing my reality of what I think is best.
Can I tell you what I'm most excited for?
What?
I'm gonna tell you, and it's gonna be because of something that you said.
Yeah.
So after our episodes aired, a couple people from OG actually came up to me like 2 days ago, and they're like, bro, I've been dapping myself up in the mirror every morning saying you're that dude, and like it's making my mood better for the day. And I'm like, I love that. Somebody's gonna listen to what you just said about asking themselves what do they want for dinner. And I know that one of us, okay, on these couches is gonna have someone DM us, come up to us, and that's what I'm most excited for with this, is that little tidbit of advice that you just gave, like how mine was just give yourself a pound in the mirror. So simple, so small, such a profound effect on them. That is going to really hit home with a lot of people. And that's what I can't wait for. I think that was so important. It's not just helpful,
it actually feels good right after you do it.
I think that's so, and I will say, like, being a single man for as long as I've been now, one of the most important things that I started doing every night is cooking for myself.
Yeah.
I will always have a fresh made meal, no leftovers.
A form of self-love.
I'll cook myself
it's also
steak.
a great form of patience.
I'll cook myself steak, and I'll make myself like a meal.
Yeah.
And every morning after the gym, and I'm like, yo, what do I want tonight? It's always steak regardless, but it's different kinds of what I'm going to eat, how I'm going to prepare it, and what I'm going to do.
You tune into your body, like, what do I want?
It's
what
such
do I need
an
right
important
now?
that. If you're not watching this and you're just listening to this, the smile on my face right now is so innocent and childlike, because I think that's one of the most important. I'm so happy you answered that question.
Everyone is a where do I start?
Like
it's way smaller than people think. I think that's what makes healing journeys so complicated. Well, they're not complicated. I think we overcomplicate them, that it's like, I got to start doing this. I have to have like this crazy, like, I know for me for a while, it was like, all right, I have to wake up every morning, see sunrise, 10,000 steps first thing in the morning, drink my water, meditate, do my journaling,
or just wake up and go to work.
But like that made me more stressed, like because now I had a perfectionism mindset that I wake up, if I didn't do the 10,000 steps, I start my day, I failed. I failed today. Like my day at 6 a.m. I failed. So it's smaller. It's like less is more. Honestly, always. So it's like, even with the big things that it's like, I know like narcissistic abuse, and it's like, where, like, what do I do? Like, do I call like a specialized therapist? Like, do I start here? Like, do I just like, do I do like, no, just start small, like start learning how to trust yourself again. Honestly, I think that, because I think that's why the recovery is so painful, is because you don't have that anymore. And if you don't trust yourself, you have no grounding. Like, you're groundless, honestly. Even if you don't trust yourself, then you don't trust God, and now your spiritual relationship is shot, your personal relationship is shot. The world is not a safe place when you have neither one of those.
You have said so many things that have literally bought me. I'm like this close to tearing up, and then I suck them back in.
I'm surprised I didn't cry today. I thought I was going to.
I'm sucking them right back in, but oh my God. So because I know that we're going to be winding down, I kind of want to ask you one question, and it's more about like the pain and the difference between female and male pain. Do you think, and it's a personal opinion.
Yeah.
Personal opinion.
It all shows personal opinions.
Of course. This is all personal opinions.
It's all personal.
Yeah.
Do you think, and it's a cliche question that's all over social media, but it's something that I'd love to get your perspective on. Do you think women or men suffer more or equally from the loss of a significant other? Who do you think feels it on a deeper level?
I think it's extremely nuanced, and I'll tell you.
Okay.
I'll tell you. You're talking about a relationship ends that you didn't want to end. You're not saying that a relationship was amicable. You guys broke up.
Yeah.
You're saying I didn't want this to happen.
Yes.
It was a painful breakup, is what you're saying. Who suffers more? So short term, woman. Long term, they're good. Men, long term suffering because you guys want the short term relief, and that's a huge thing. We after a breakup, we'll sit in it. Not all of us, by the way. There's women that will immediately be on dating apps the next day.
Go out and
this
party
is also
and drink,
this is not like black and white. I'm just making honestly like a stereotypical view right now. Women, for the most part, we will sit with it. We will sit with it because we are more comfortable sitting with our emotions, as you guys are not always. So we're more comfortable sitting in this. We talking about like in your last couple episodes of like support system. I can call 4 of my girlfriends and be like, can you sleep over for the next 5 days while I cry my fucking eyes out? And they're like, yep, I'll be right there. And we'll cry, we'll shit talk, we'll talk about this, we'll do that. Like, and, all right, you're good. Like, you want to do this for another month? Let's do it for another month. But like, we're going to get you up and we're going to get you out. And then like, couple of months goes by. Like, that's why there's the cliche of like 6 months after a girl breaks up, the guy always comes back, because now it's hitting him. Now his suffering starts, and she's like, I'm actually good because I just sat with it for the last 6 months. So I don't think, now that's just an example. I don't think that anyone's suffering is more or less. And where that comes from as well is something that I have to never do with my female clients, that I have to do with almost every single male client. How their first session starts is, women will log on with me and be like, I'm feeling frustrated, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling scared, like, they'll name all of these things that they're feeling. Every guy that I have that logs on will say to me, I'm numb and I have no idea what I'm feeling. They legitimately, and I don't mean numb like I'm lifeless, but they actually can't.
They can't process. They can't
identify what they're feeling. Okay. Like, they're like, I don't like, they're so
lost, right? Almost
detached from like being able to sit with an emotion, and it's not their fault. It's a huge societal thing, but they're like, I don't really know what I'm feeling. All I know is this girl I really liked broke up with me last week, and I didn't cry, and I don't know why, because I'm sad, but like nothing's coming to me at this point. Yeah. Like, they actually can't identify it. So I don't think one person's suffering is worse or greater or whatnot. I just think it all comes down to, are you willing to sit with it or not? So if you're willing to sit with it as a man, and if you're willing to sit with it as a woman, like, it'll pass. But I always talk about this with people, that you need to have, if you go through the short-term suffering, you will have the long-term happiness. But if you want to skip the short-term suffering for the short-term happiness, that's fine, but it will be exactly that. It'll be short-term.
So, final question. On our social media pages, the bombardment of men. My wife left me. I want to kill myself. She took the kids. She did this. She did that. This ended. That ended. And I'm noticing a replaying factor, that it always comes down to the loss of a partner that these men are constantly wanting to kill themselves over. What would you say is the starting point for those men that have experienced this loss, whether it's their children being taken from them, their wife, their spouse, significant other, girlfriend, fiance, a relationship that they didn't want to end but now has ended, and they are in this downward spiral. Mm-hmm. What is it, and what piece of advice for them as a starting point can you offer them to start their journey to feel a little bit more whole again?
So there's a couple things I'll say. The first thing I think is actually a lot harder than it sounds, but it's to change your narrative. Not of my wife left me and she took all the kids and I'm a loser and I'll have nothing and I'm just the worst. Like, be honest, first of all. And I'm not saying that you deserve it, but what are the facts in the situation?
Well, you are what you convince yourself you are.
What are the facts? Like, the facts can be my wife left me and I don't have the kids anymore. So what are the facts? Stay consistent with the facts. Like, don't change the story, because a lot of the times we'll create we'll create a victim story of she left me, he left me, I can't believe this is happening. The story can be taking accountability, not blame, for what is happening in the moment. Where can you be better? So coming back to, like, who were you? Why did this happen? How can you be different moving forward? And this is like an answer that I think is really hard for some people, but like, what can you control at the moment? And I know you can't get your kids back tomorrow. If you lost custody of your kids today, you're not getting custody back today. What can you do? Again, tending to that person that you want to be, that life that you want to have. Maybe that person has full custody of his kids, this person that you want to be, or whatever, split custody. What is he doing? And start doing that today. Because a lot of the times when we're in that narrative of like, I lost my kids, my wife, that guy's probably not tending to himself. He's probably not taking care of himself. He's probably, and I'm not saying that's why she left, but he's sunken into this narrative now of like, this is who I am. This is my reality. I just suck. I'm the worst. And I'm never going to see them again. And maybe he's out drinking. Maybe he's abusing another substance, or maybe he's overworking now. He's picking up more hours. Don't deal with the reality of what's happening. Understand there's a lot that you don't have control over.
Staying present.
Say that again?
Staying present.
Stay present, but actually feel what is happening. That's a huge thing that we keep talking about. Like, actually feel, what are you feeling right now? How is it showing up physically in your body? What are you feeling? And starting today, literally in this second, what can you do? And maybe the answer is nothing, right? Like, maybe it's like, there's nothing I can do to get my kids back at this moment. But what can you do to better yourself in this moment? What can you do to take the focus off of what you can't control and what you can control, which really is only you in the situation? And I think that, again, like, I hate using the accountability example, because I don't want to make it sound like, well, take accountability for why your wife took the kids. You know what I mean? Like what did you do? Like, I'm not really exactly saying that, but it's more just accepting the reality of the situation. And I know that doesn't make it any less painful. But you have to take strides forward. You know, like, if you're in the middle of this forest right now and you don't know how you're going to get out, but you can take one step. Right. And something I tell people is we think way too big, where it's like, well, what about when he's 18? And what about this? And what, if you can't do not think the big picture. You take it one day at a time. And if you can't take it one day at a time, you take it a moment at a time. And if you can't take it a moment, you take it a fucking second at a time. Like, you just take that next step that's in front of you, and the biggest torture is thinking long-term of what's going to happen. Like, am I never going to see them again, or like this, or like, think smaller, like think small, think of that next step. And again, if it's a minute, if it's an hour, if it's literally just the next 30 seconds of your life, like, that is what you focus on right now. And eventually you'll make your way out of the forest, but you can't think of this huge forest that you're in. How am I going to get out?
Listen, you can't think your way out of a problem the same way that you can't, like, snort yourself out of a cocaine addiction.
No,
you know what
exactly.
I'm saying?
Right. So if your kids got taken away from you for whatever reason, whether you are, like, honestly, the other thing I do want to say is, even though I said, like, I'm not blaming you, take accountability if you are to blame. Take accountability if you were shitty. Take an accountability if you were an addict, if you were not present, if you were abusive, if emotionally, physically, like, that is the other side of it. That if there is an element of that, like, your starting point is like, take a look in the mirror.
Yep.
And you need to make some changes, and you need to be the person and the father that you want to be going forward. The other side of the spectrum that I'm referring to is a scenario where maybe you did absolutely nothing wrong, and just by the law, your wife has the kids. But I'm going to be honest, It's not always the case.
Yep.
And I'm not blaming anybody, but like take accountability for what you did. Like take accountability, be honest, and move forward. Like you have to. If you don't want to, that's fine, but like you're not going to get the outcome you want.
Taylor, you're very fortunate, man.
Yeah, of course.
A lot of ways.
I'm very fortunate.
You both are very fortunate.
Very fortunate.
I think you both are completely in simpatico with one another, and it's cool to see how intelligent you both are on two total separate ends of the spectrum, and to get you both here at the same time. And
he's taught me a lot, and he definitely has inspired me a lot. And
you inspired me too, bro.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
So with that episode coming to complete, we hope that you guys got to enjoy it. I'm sure we will absolutely have Kate on again, because after this airs, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions, a lot of feelings that arise, and so on and so forth. And if my two guys have anything else to say it. Or I think we got everything pretty much good. It was great. Yeah, I had so much fun with you here today. So thank
I honestly
you.
Forgot that we were recording.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you guys for having me and seeing value in having me. It means a lot.
So valuable.
Yeah. Thank you.
And we hope that the people listening absolutely take something away from this episode. So thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Look, will you be absolutely genuine with me? No deception, please. I want you to do something that expresses you without the slightest deception.